Welcome. In the last video we have seen how the Lightning Accelerator package of price list setting and price management gives us a possibility to adjust, for example, our country price lists, and how we can change the different parameters and execute them in a price list. We ended up with submitting this price list and triggering a workflow process, which is now executed and which we now can put into revision. So we see that this price list is submitted, and we see that this price list was submitted by me, and we also see when this price list was submitted. We now have the possibility in a PriceFX included functionality to take this workflow and to also approve or to refuse the prices according to it. So if I'm selecting this price list here, I see that every time a price list is set up, it is supposed to be approved. So every time somebody is approving a price list, it will always have to be approved. Possible approvers are myself, and I see that the approval status is in 0 of 1 different steps. We also see that the last action time was a couple minutes ago. So what I can do now is I can approve this price list from here, or I can refuse the price list from here in order to achieve the price list execution and also base future quotings which my sales reps might be doing on these price changes which I have executed in the price list. So this can be done from here, but an alternative to that could also be doing this via an email escalation. So with the approval process, an email was sent out straight away, and this email is basically including generic information like which kind of price list was approved, why this needs approval, who was this price list created by, and from here with one click I can either open up the price list in detail, I can approve the price list straight away, and I can also decline the price list straight away. So let's say we want to approve the price list generated. I click on the approval button, it forwards me to a new tab, which is basically requesting from me that the price list needs approval. And the price list was still created by myself, and I can add a comment here. And I can approve the price list to boost sales, for example, in Germany. Going forward with approving this price list, I get a notification that the price list was approved, and I can also straight away see that this price list has now an approval status which is approved. I can see that this price list was approved by myself, and I can also see when this price list was approved. When I want to define a workflow, so who's allowed to approve what at which kind of stage, I can do this again via the parameters in PriceFX. So in PriceFX we have a section for parameters which is called approval workflow, where I first of all can define the workflow setup, the workflow condition, and who's supposed to be approver. So clicking on the approval workflow setup, I can directly see that there are multiple different workflows which are set up in the system. So for example, there's a workflow for contracting, for live price grids, for price lists, and this is the one we have triggered. And we see there's a workflow for quoting for 1 step, 2, and for a 3rd step. So let's assume we want to set up a new step for my quoting workflow. So I can go into the system and can directly go ahead and add a new record to this table by saying, what do we want to approve here? We want to approve a quote. We already have 3 steps in our workflow approach, so I want to add a 4th. The step order is basically the same. I can enter a step label, so for example, check margin when it is bigger 0%. I can enter a reason if needed, so for example, the margin must be above 0%. I can define if this is supposed to be skipped. I can define the step type and the minimum approvers. And I can add this to this table. We see now that we have another quote workflow step which we have just added. What we have to do now in addition is we have to change the approval workflow conditions, because we also have to define a mapping of the 0% to the value which is included in the quote. So in the quote we have per product a field called line margin percentage, and we can define now a trigger based on this field when this is below 0%. So we do the same we have done previously. We add a record here. We say we want to do this for a quote. This will be the fourth step. It will be the fourth condition ID. The description is again margin must be above 0%. The condition is line dot margin PCT for percentage must be bigger, must not be smaller, sorry, than 0. And we can define if this step is allowed to be skipped or not. In this situation it's not. The line is added here, and then the last step we can now define who's allowed to approve that. In this situation it will be the same approver than the line step 3, so we can take this line here, we can copy it, and we can basically just change the step ID. And like this we have added a new workflow step for this approval workflow in order to make sure that our sales reps in the field are having to face another threshold of authorization if they are trying to approve a quote where a product is less than profitable, so below 0% in margin. For sure, if I have approved something in PriceFX, there's also an additional email sent. So for example, in our situation, we have approved a price list. This price list had always to be approved, and it was approved by myself, and we can now view the price list in detail and execute from there. In the next step, we will now see how the initial price point for the product we have priced, so the item which was at $377, has now changed in price, and how this price change is executed in the field with regards to the quoting tool also included into the Lightning approach.